Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is Mr. Zabo, and we are going to solve quadratic functions and quadratic equations by taking square roots today. So first, quick reminder. When we are taking a square root, we are asking what number times itself is equal to what's inside this symbol. This is a radical symbol or a square root symbol. Or, in other words, I'm looking to say that, hey, the square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. Where you got to be careful is when you have this little sign on the outside. That kind of is like an afterthought. We are taking the square root of 16 first and saying that's 4, but since that negative is on the outside, it stays. Okay? And then conversely, if we skip to this last one, this is a little different because now that negative is not on the outside, it's on the inside. And this is a little bit tricky. Take a second and press that into your calculator. Hopefully, you got to this aspect. You type that negative on the inside, you get an error, and it actually gives you a specific error message. It says non-real answer. You can quit or you can go to it. If we choose number 2 and go to the error, it's going to blink. It's saying that this is wrong. You can't do this. So whenever you have a negative inside your square root, what we say is that this is undefined. And the square root of 0 is 0. And just a couple of real quick checks. If I clear that out now, square root, again, is this squared, x squared button, but it's this symbol here. So since it's in blue, you have to press the second button first. Second square root 25 and hit enter is 5. And then the negative outside, second square root 16, square root outside, we're good. Same thing, but the negative is on the inside. Not possible. Okay. So the focus today is using that concept and the fact that if I take the square root of x squared, I can't put that in my calculator. But what times itself gives me x squared? Well, x squared is x times x. So the square root of x squared is x. These two concepts together allows me to use this operation to solve equations. If I have x squared equals a number, I can take the square root of both sides. It's still algebra. We still have to do the same thing on both sides. Okay? And as we just discussed here, the square root of x squared is x. So this left side of my equal sign just becomes x. The right side of my equal sign is saying what times itself gives me 81. And I'm guessing most of you said 9, and that's correct. But what you have to be careful of, this is where this lesson gets tricky, is there's another number. Can you think of it? Did anybody say it? It's also possible to use, drum roll, -9. Because if I do negative times negative, that's why the parentheses are important. So what we would answer in this case is that there are two answers. Plus or minus 9. You would need that, or you could write it as 9, comma, -9. Two possible answers. Alright, now, if I look at example 2 here, I can't do it yet. The only thing that I can say here is we have to get x squared on one side by itself before taking square roots. I can't take the square root of 2x squared. I can only take the square root of x squared. So I can use algebra to get x squared by itself. Divide by 2 on both sides. Now I have my x squared by itself, and it's equal to 9. Take the square root, take the square root. Anytime I am taking the square root on two sides of an equal sign, I have two possible answers. Okay? And if you don't know the square root of 9, don't be afraid to use your calculator. Second x squared is your square root sign. Press 9, you get 3. You get positive or negative 3. Okay? I want you to press pause and take 2, 3, 4 minutes, whatever you need to try to complete answers for 3, 4, and 5. If you need your calculator, use your calculator. Okay. Press pause and go. Alright, hopefully we got this for answers 3, 4, and 5. If you have not gotten those, go back and see what you might have done wrong. Press pause to check. Alright, and here's the work that matches up with those. Make sure you mark some things, note some questions if you have questions or concerns. Okay. And I didn't put the answer to number 6 up there yet, but let's talk through that one. First step, again, get x squared by itself. That means I have to subtract 10 from both sides. But when I do that, I get x squared equals -1. I know right away there's no solution to this. And we can understand that and think about that both algebraically, we can think about that graphically, or we can use our calculator to help us find that. There is no solution because if I take the square root of both sides, I can't square root a negative. And if we used our calculator to identify that, square root of -1, I get my error message, a non-real answer. More to come on what that means later. Alright, so now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more problems that I want you guys to try. Press pause and try these 5. Check answers for 1, 2, and 3. I'll show work in a minute. Press pause to fix them. And here's the work that goes along with those first 3. Alright, now the only issue we get with this last problem here is the fact that that's not a perfect square. If we take our calculator out, we get a decimal. What we are going to ask you to do is to round to the nearest hundredth. Okay. It means it's not a perfect square. Hundredth means 2 decimal places. Okay. So, in this case, I have 4.472135955. It would go on, but I'm only concerned, if I want 2 decimal places, I'm concerned about 3. Remember how to round. 4.472 is what's important. 4.472. I only want 2 decimal places, but I need this third. That third is what tells me what to do here, because that is less than 5. So if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, you keep the second decimal point. If it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I bump that up 1. My solution here would be approximately positive or negative 4.47. You still need 2 answers there. Okay. Alright, last thing I want to talk about is comparing the graphs. So take a minute and see what you can do with this problem. So algebraically, we should have gotten x equals plus or minus 2, and now with the graph, okay, it's in standard form already, so I can say it's y equals x squared minus 4. A is 1, b is 0, c is -4. Y-intercept is at 0, c, so 0, -4. Okay, but that's also the vertex, because the opposite of b divided by 2 times a is 0, so that's the vertex. So to find my additional points, knowing that this y-axis is my line of symmetry, or my axis of symmetry, I'm just going to choose additional points of x equals 1 and x equals 2. If I put 1 in for x, 1 squared minus 1 is 3, -3. 1, -3 is an additional point. But I've got the reflected point over here as well from that, over my line of symmetry. That doesn't help me get my solutions. So I go and I choose 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. So 2, 0. There's my intersection. There's my solution. Why is it plus or minus? Because I also have that reflected point over my axis of symmetry. I could check that algebraically as well. If I put -2 in here, -2 times -2 is 4, minus 4 is 0. I get the same solutions. The last thing that we actually have to talk about in this video is we can use this to solve only when we have negative or any kind of a coefficient but a, but I can use this mainly when b is equal to 0. If b is equal to 0, I can solve by taking square roots. If b is anything but 0, I cannot. In this function, b is equal to 0. So, I want to know when this object reaches the ground. The ground is when my height is 0. So I can change this to 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 75. Get t squared by itself. I like to do it this way. Some people do it a different way, but I like to deal with positive coefficients. So if I add 16t squared to both sides, I get this positive, and it's equal to 75. Finish the algebra, divide both sides by 16. I get t squared is equal to 75 over 16, and that's what I'm going to put in my calculator. I'm going to take the square root of 75 divided by 16. Okay. I want decimals here. Okay. Algebraically, we get that t is approximately 2.16, and if we keep going, 506, but I want to round to the nearest hundredth. That means, what do I care about? I care about this. That's a 5. It tells me to add 1 to the second decimal place. So this is going to take approximately 2.17 seconds. You have a Math Excel assignment. Please refer to this video if you have questions.